back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, if you're in the market for top tier sub 500cc roadster motorcycles, then look no further than the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450, the Triumph Speed 400, and also the Hero Maverick 450. Now, we decided to pit these motorcycles against each other from three various different manufacturers to find out just who does what best.
It's an exciting time to be out in the market looking to buy your first single-cylinder sub 500cc motorcycle because, well, there's a horde to choose from. Whether it's sporty motorcycles to adventure tourers, there's a lot of options out there currently. But today out here we have three motorcycles that cater to a very unique segment, and that is the Retro Teen Roadster. Now these motorcycles, they are supposed to be fun and exciting rides. How they fare out on the road comparatively in this test, you're about to find out. The Maverick 440 is Hero's first venture into the premium motorcycle space above 300 cc's. And of course, it has proved to be, as far as Hero MotoCorp is concerned, well, it has upped the game in terms of refinement and quality. But then again, it's here to prove what it can do in comparison to the rest out here. Alright, so now moving on to the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450. Now, if you're thinking it, well, you might be wrong, because this is not simply a restyled Himalayan 450. Now, there's a lot that's changed on this motorcycle from, well, it is lighter, it sits closer to the ground, shorter wheelbase, different swing arm, a smaller sprocket at the back, which has changed the gear ratios. And, well, overall, it is just tuned to be a lot less of an adventure tourer and more of a user-friendly road bike. And like the others out here, it has got its point to prove. Moving on to the Triumph. Now, this is easily one of the most modern, classic, well, a fan favorite in the segment because, well, it's got speed, it's got agility, maybe not so much in terms of, well, flashy looks or gimmicky features as well. This motorcycle pretty much broke the mold in terms of making a brand name like Triumph, and more importantly, a very fun motorcycle, very accessible to the common man. Now, like the others out here today, it has its point to prove in this company, and the time for talk is over. It's time to get to business and see how these motorcycles square up against each other.
Now, all three motorcycles here have an upright riding position with wide handlebars. But that's pretty much where the similarities end, to be honest. Now, each have their own sets of unique charms in their design, and let's start off with the Triumph. The riding position on the Triumph is upright, but quite relaxed with the low position foot pegs. The attention to detail and the level of fit and finish is a real standout with the Speed. It aesthetically tries to mimic that what you get with bigger, more expensive bikes, which is great to see and feel. In terms of features, it's got a rather plain but slightly odd instrumentation readout. Now, I would have preferred if it had an analog tacho needle and a digital speedo readout instead, but that's alright. Now, there's no Bluetooth connectivity here as well, and in fact it's the only one that misses out on this feature. But it's the only one that gets switchable traction control. Now, bar and mirrors, well, it lends a touch of class, but it could get in the way when you're trying to squeeze past standing traffic. The Maverick 440 is a rather bold statement from Hero. It looks and feels very premium by the company's standards, and although it shares many of its cycle parts with the Harley-Davidson X440, I love the fact that this one has these tank extensions that cover the otherwise ghastly gap between the tank and the fork, as you can see on the Harley. In the pictures, it shows off hints of a muscle bike, and when you actually get down to riding it, you'll see that part of that character is in fact translated. You'll feel a certain amount of heft with this one, but it's not a burden by any means. The upright riding position with mid-mounted foot controls is not overly stressing as well. The saddle gives you plenty of room to move about, and it's got lots of Hero branding all over, which does look neat in some places, like the H-themed lights at both ends. The Maverick also may have the least interesting display of the three out here today, but the patch on the left side of the handlebar really gets to me. Probably because I know that it's the place that the toggle buttons would ideally be on the more expensive Harley-Davidson X440. And this is also the only one that gets twin shocks at the rear as well. There's no hiding this Guerrilla. It's a bike that stands out no matter what colorway you choose. And it looks like a motorcycle that's been going to the gym regularly and not skipping out on leg days either. I mean, look at those tires. It's got the biggest section tires for a bike of its kind, with the 120 up front and a 160 section at the rear. Still, it feels a lot lighter than the Himalayan 450 at least. Well, there's no upside down fork, a smaller wheel at the fore, and yes, there is an odd looking gap in the headlight housing, but aside from that, nothing much to complain about. The bike looks big and it feels so when you actually get astride it as well. The tank looks massive, but it holds just 11 liters of fuel, which is too shy of the others out here. The riding position is a little more aggressive with higher mounted foot pegs, so taller riders will feel a little cramped over long distances on this one. I feel a longer seat would have suited the Guerrilla better too. This top spec model has got the fancy TFT display which allows you to cast your phone screen onto the device, and it's got all the switchgear from the Himalayan 452, which is good for most part. Now this one's got switchable ABS and it's even got 2 ride modes. But I didn't like how Eco mode dials down the attitude of this bike, so I pretty much stayed away from it.
Well, we're not done with this comparison story just yet. More action after this very short break. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, we've been stacking the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450 against the Triumph Speed 400 as well as the Hero Maverick 450. And we've spoken about the design and features, but now it's time to talk about the performance and also bring you the verdict.
Now, a real standout bit about the Guerrilla 450 has to be that Sherpa 452cc single-cylinder liquid-cooled engine. Now, of course, it's the same unit that has been carried over from the Himalayan 450. It makes the same amount of power and torque at 40 PS and 40 Nm. But then the rate of delivery has changed tremendously on account of the final drive ratio, which has been altered, as well as that rear sprocket. Now, the rear sprocket has 2 teeth less than before. It's down to 45 now, and that has altered the way this motorcycle performs, and, well, it responds to your throttle inputs, well, lower down the power band as well. From 2000 to 4000, it feels a lot livelier than before, than something on the Himalayan. And of course, once it's past that 4500 mark, well, this thing just takes off. It just wants to fly, and that's something that you'll really appreciate on this motorcycle.
In terms of mileage, the RE gave back 28 kilometers per litre overall, which is the least from all the 3 that we have out here today. And considering that it has the smallest fuel bladder, well, you'll be stopping to tank up more often than not in this kind of company. The Speed 400 makes almost the same amount of power as the Guerrilla, but not as much torque. But what stands out here is the rate of power delivery, which is very linear and there's no sudden spikes, like with the Enfield. Things are smooth but a bit lackluster under 2500 to say around 3000 RPM, but it's a lot more tractable than the motor on the Enfield, and it manages lower speeds at higher gears a lot better and doesn't grumble as much in the process. Things remain composed and very gentlemanly up to the 5000 to 6000 RPM mark, where you'll hit a sweet spot if you plan on cruising at around say 100 kilometers per hour, with the liquid-cooled 398cc motor humming nicely with some nice acoustics from the exhaust can as well. Open throttle and she's ready to rock and roll, just that it isn't as anxious to propel you forward with ferocity as much as the Enfield. In terms of running efficiency, the Triumph, well, it finished a marginal second to the Hero, returning 34.5 kilometers per litre. With the Maverick 440, it's not about being flashy or fast. It's more of a relaxed bike where you take things easy and have fun while doing so. If it's high speed you seek, you'll have to be patient with the Hero, because let's just say that you're not going to win any sprint races with this one, which is fine because it goes well with the long stroke motor, which gives this bike a very distinct character with a somewhat familiar but very different melodic thumb to it. But sadly, this engine lacks downright refinement. It felt less refined than the motor on the Harley X440 too, and it's pretty much the same motor in there. Now, if you're cruising at around 80 kilometers per hour and that is your deal, well, the Hero does this masterfully well. The brakes and the suspension hold up very nicely at the speeds this bike is capable of achieving, but sadly, speeds in excess of 100 kilometers per hour feel like you're really pushing it more than you ideally should.
Alright, now let's get one thing straight. If you opt to buy or go in for any of these 3 motorcycles, you are going to be judged by your peers. And according to me, at least, well, if you opt for something like the Hero Maverick 440, you will be seen as a very easygoing, relaxed person who's usually not in a hurry to get from A to B, and at the end of it, a Hero fanboy. But then again, if you opt for something like the Triumph Speed 400, now you will be seen as more of the connoisseur of the finer things in life. Likes to keep things neat and tidy, loves to ride sporty, and yes, with agility and a bit of stealth thrown into the mix as well. And of course, moving to the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450. Now, if you opt for this particular machine, you will be seen as a person who just wants all eyes on me at all times. And yes, it might be a bit heavy, it might be a little cumbersome to ride in comparison to the other two. But then again, it's all about aggression and power. More aggression, more power. This machine, it's all about that. But for me personally, I would really fancy something like the Triumph Speed 400 because of the current package that it offers. It is sporty, it is nimble, it is a real breeze and a hoot to ride, not only in the city, but once you actually get out onto the open roads out of town. And of course, fairly decently priced. Now, yes, that's a great thing. And of course, this motorcycle, it doesn't have a comprehensive list of, well, fancy gimmicky features that could go awry somewhere down the line in the future. So this is the motorcycle that I pick as my winner. Which one do you choose? That is depending all on your riding style.
That's it then from us on this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with us through our various social media platforms, and you can write to us on YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.